Hey! All right, so it finally worked. Unfortunately, no one is here right now because YouTube is deciding to be a pain in the butt. So I apologize for a moment while I kind of go through here and attempt to kind of let everybody know where the heck I am, since the other stream that I had planned decided to not work. So not entirely sure what uh, I just don't even know. I don't even know what YouTube is doing right now. Yay! All right, good. You guys found me. Well, I'm going to post a comment over in the other one. Hey guys, JK about this stream. Join over here. All right. So hopefully that will help people who were originally planning to join the previous one find this one. Okay. So getting off to a fantastic start today on Friday the 13th. Not saying that it's why everything's happening. I'm just saying that 5 o'clock somewhere and someone at YouTube blew it. So glad to have you guys here to join me on today's live stream. I'm super excited about the questions that I found / received from some of the the writers that I know. Some of these I found on Quora, and I wanted to be able to answer them more in depth here during the video. So to kind of give you guys an update, I am now planning my live streams for the month. So if you guys are subscribed, you'll see on the home page all of the live streams that I have planned for September, which is only one other one. In October, again, when we get closer to that, you'll see all of the live streams that I have planned, and I'll be updating thumbnails and the descriptions the closer we get to those dates. But I wanted to let you guys know kind of when you can expect to have the live streams. So I think that's pretty much everything in terms of kind of updating you guys now that we've finally got on the live stream. So digging into the first question that we got, this comes from NorthLondonTales. They are on Twitter. You can find them at Tales North on Twitter, and I recommend following them. Their question was, how do you keep to the plot while writing? There are so many subplots and quirky characters that pop in. Yes, that is a author's struggle, to be sure. So the way that I go about doing and really kind of keeping track of everything is I use a program called Xmind 8. Now, if you're not familiar with what Xmind 8 is, it's like a mind mapping software. And what it allows you to do is take these little topics, break them down into smaller subtopics. You can create relationships between the topics. You can do notes. You can kind of change some of the colors. I just use the free version. It's a massive file. Let's just start there. It's a huge file. So your laptop, computer, it will not work on a phone. It will probably not run it, unless if it's an older one. If you have enough space, then it should be fine. It may just run a little bit slow. I do have videos planned as part of my creating a writing process series that is going to talk about, and I'm actually going to show you guys how to use Xmind. That's going to be coming up in the next few weeks. So something to look forward to. The way that I structure it is I have a main topic, which is the usually like the book title. And then I break that down into 4 subtopics, which is characters, races, locations, and blanking on the last one. But I know there's 4. And then I break it down into further subtopics. So with all the characters, I break it down so there's a single strand of subtopics, and each one is named after the character. You can create notes on them specifically. And so every time you click on it, you can open up the note and it has the backstory or whatever you want to do. I don't put a lot of the backstories in there. A lot of them are just in my head, and because I've been working for so long, I can kind of track with a lot of them. But that is a good way to track character motivations. The next thing that you can do with Xmind is you can create, I think they call it like a fishbone map. There's different structures. So you'll have a topic, it'll go down, and then it'll go down, and it'll just kind of alternate. You can do that per character if you wanted to. You can do that for your timeline. You can break up the timeline. This is a very, very helpful way of kind of tracking everything. The main thing about characters is you need to know what their motivations are outside of the grand plot that you have going. Because one, that's going to help you figure out how to keep track of your plot. Because not everybody needs to have the same motivations as the protagonist. So if you have somebody who is, let's say, trying to think of a good example here. Let's say Aragorn, right? So you have Aragorn. He has a different motivation than the main plot of Lord of the Rings. The main plot, take ring, throw it into Mount Doom. That is the whole point of the book. His character motivation is to reclaim the throne of Gondor and his kingship. That is his motivation. So when you're writing, his character supports the main plot, but then he has his own thing. Now, it doesn't have to be necessarily as big as his, but that's an example. With the main plot, you need to know how you want it to go from beginning to end. And that is where the milestone method really can come in handy. The way that works is that you draw a horizontal line and you have your beginning, your middle, and your end, and you make 3 slashes. Then you go through and you make little alternating tick marks, and those are your big events. Those are the big things that are going to happen. So you're not narrowing down into like the little minutia detail and spending 15 minutes on every single thing. Big ideas. That allows you to track and make sure that you are on track with your main plot story. Those smaller tick marks can be something for character motivation. It could be a side plot that you want to make sure that comes to fruition. So tracking it in that way is really the easiest way to do that. That's how you keep track of it. Now, if you're going to have quirky characters pop up, which inevitably happens, they spring out of holes in the ground. It can be frustrating and it can be delightful at the same time, because it was a character that you weren't planning on having and is suddenly there and then you love. The thing with the milestones is that if you create a character and you're like, all right, well, how do I want this character to fit into it? You can create new milestones. Like, they're not set in stone. They're waypoints. They're check marks. So horizontal line, 3 big slashes, your beginning, your middle, your end. And those little tick marks in between them, that is really where you're going to be able to stay on track with that overall plot, even with those other characters, because you're still writing forward. It's not a hard outline, which is not something that I'm able to do and utilize well. It's much softer and it's more fluid and flexible. So I hope that answered part of your question. The other way that you can kind of track with the characters and the plot, and I don't think I added it before because of all of the technical difficulties, but I'll add links to Xmind. That one's in there. That's under the writing tools for writers. The site called World Anvil is a place that you can kind of store up all of your information. It's free, but it's not blocked, so everybody can kind of see it. That's not what you're looking for. There is Campfire Technology, and they have a 10-day free trial. And I haven't used either of these extensively, so do a little bit of research and find out for yourself which ones have worked for you. I've used Xmind. I might switch over to Campfire at some point if I like it. I still have to do the test run. But it's a lifetime membership for $25, which to me is a great price. And then if you get like the super version, it's $50, but it's a lifetime membership. For the price and for kind of what they're offering, it's not a bad price. So that, again, they have like character cards and you can kind of move them around on the screen. That is another way to kind of keep track of everything. It's kind of like World Anvil and Xmind had a baby, and it was Campfire Technologies, because you can create lines to certain events that are specific to that character. So keep that in mind as a tool. And again, once this stream is done and before I repost it on YouTube, I'll have those links down below. All right. The next question was, this was one that I saw on Quora that I thought was really good. Is do you keep a thesaurus on your desk, or do you consider that lazy and or cheating? It's on my desk. And if you guys wonder where I get my Wacky Word Wednesdays, I literally just open this up and find the most ridiculous thing that I can possibly find in there. It's awesome. And it's incredibly thick. I mean, there's got to be well over, let's see. Yeah, there's probably, there's over 1,000 pages in here of just crazy words. But it's not cheating. It is actually incredibly beneficial, and you should totally use one. It's going to strengthen your writing, for one, because you're going to find words. Yeah, exactly, Shadow. They're so helpful. If you're stuck on a word and you're just like, they died slowly, it lacks some flair, right? It's not quite as impactful as, I watched the light slowly fade from their eyes. That is more impactful than died slowly. I mean, you can use that maybe in like dialogue, like, yeah, they died slowly. Or, you could say, I watched the light fade from their eyes. It's more impactful. This particular one not only has just a gazillion words, but it's also got like Latin phrases, which I thought was really cool. It has different literary words. It's got archaic words, which is always exciting. I like archaic, like, oh, they have hearken and hence and herbery. Hereunto, hereupon. Yeah, so I mean, a kicksaw, it's a fancy but insubstantial cooked dish. See, these are things that you would not know had I not had a thesaurus in front of me. You would not have known what kicksaw was and that it was a fancy but insubstantial cooked dish. So get some. I recommend this book, and actually, I'll tell you what. I'll link this particular book, the Oxford American Writers Thesaurus, 3rd edition. I'll link it down in the show notes below at the end, so that way you guys can go and take a look at it for yourself, or just be like, hey, it's my birthday, or Christmas is coming up. If you celebrate Halloween, trick or treat, hand these out to kids. Trick or treat, who needs candy? Hand these suckers out. Like, Lord knows we could use some actual vocabulary building skills as a society. So it's not cheating. In fact, it is I don't want to say essential, because it's really not a hard and fast rule, but if you really want to grow your vocabulary, if you really want to expand your craft and learn how to write better, write more impactful sentences, then get something like that, because it's going to help you do that. I've learned a ton of new words from there that I didn't know before, and there are things I look in there, I'm like, I have to incorporate this into my writing somehow. Like, it's this is awesome. I'm going to have to find a way to write kickshaw in there, because people need to know that it is a fancy but insubstantial cooked dish. It has to happen. So keep an eye on that for my in my book. All right. So next one. Best ways to improve writing skills and avoid spelling mistakes. Go to school, learn, practice. Okay, that's not it's not the whole thing. But that is a part of it. Like, you actually need to like absorb some of that stuff. I'll be honest with you guys. I barely can remember anything from school. If you ask me right now what an adjective is, I would be able to tell you it is a name for a noun or something, some variant of that. And that's because my son has a poster out there because he just entered 1st grade. I don't remember this stuff. I can't actively recall it, but I can write. Like, I don't know how, but I can. I know it's like it's ingrained in my brain, but I can't readily pull it up. So learning that's super helpful. 2 things that are also very helpful. They're not a replacement for learning. Yeah, it's such a struggle. So Grammarly and ProWriting Aid are 2 very helpful tools for improving your writing. And I actually have coming up, trying to think if it was next week or after the next live stream, but I have recorded a versus, like pros versus cons for Grammarly and ProWriting Aid. And instead of just like talking to you about it, I actually show you why they're good, why you should have them, and probably use them in unison. But first, Grammarly is, while none of them are 100% right 100% of the time, Grammarly is very, very user-friendly. It has a very clean user interface. It has a free version, and it will capture the majority of misspellings and some other punctuation issues, which is fabulous. Really, when you're starting off, that is super beneficial. The other thing that it does is that it actually tells you why it's incorrect. If something, the thing that I get nailed for all the time is misplaced commas and passive writing. It's really annoying that no matter how hard I try, I still get stuck on these. But over the course of the 2 years that I've been using Grammarly, I have learned how to improve my writing using these little suggestions and these alerts that it has. It is frustrating at times because the free version is limited. The free version only allows you to do so much, but those are the big things that it'll catch. Misspellings. If you're looking at it and you're like, this is right, but it's telling me it's wrong. It gives an example of why it's wrong. So how can I change the sentence to make it better? That's how I use it. So I use Grammarly whenever I'm doing my my first draft, and it's worked very well for me. I've written pretty much everything that I have in Grammarly. So the free version is worth it. I would absolutely check it out. There is a link down in the show notes for Grammarly. Give it a test run. Just see if you like it, see if it works for you. And if you're just like, yeah, this is garbage, uninstall it. It's free. You can do that. Pro Writing Aid is actually much more in depth. It's a little more complicated because you have more reports. You have a summary that is just friggin' huge. And it catches some of the more technical things that Grammarly won't necessarily catch. The upside for that is that you have a deeper and more and a richer experience with Pro Writing Aid because you're learning more about your writing and your style. The downside is that there is no free version of that I could find. They have like a 2-week free trial, which I used, and I was very impressed with it. And I hadn't ever used it before. I had heard people praising it. When I actually tried it and I looked at it, I was pleasantly surprised by how much it caught. I took chapter 1 from my book, and I plugged it into Grammarly and I plugged it into Pro Writing Aid, and Grammarly only came up with 295 alerts ish, and Pro Writing Aid came up with like 450. I mean, it's very extensive. It catches the adverbs and it tells you, where your sticky words are. It has a high, there's a lot. But what was interesting is that as I was going through there and I was checking the different colored lines, Grammarly actually caught something that Pro Writing Aid didn't. And it was a misspelled word. So not 100% right 100% of the time. But the way that I'm probably going to be utilizing both of these moving forward, because Grammarly per year, if you pay for it by annually, is $140, which is pretty expensive, and it's served me well. I've enjoyed using it, but I bought on sale Pro Writing Aid for $140. It's $240 for a lifetime membership. That's what I bought. A lifetime membership is $240, which means that in 2 years, it'll have paid for itself because I've spent $280 on Grammarly. It's literally a 50-year subscription. I will be 89 and probably borderline senile when this thing renews. I'm probably not even going to need it at that point. So the way that I'm probably going to utilize both of these is that I'm going to upload my chapters and stuff into Pro Writing Aid and use the free version of Grammarly to catch all of the other little stuff. Yeah, it is a deal. I was actually pleasantly surprised. And if you are a student, you can qualify for 20% off. So if you go to the pricing screen and you scroll all the way down to the bottom, it says if you're a student, you can get 20% off of it. So keep that in mind, because that could be really helpful. Now, the thing about both of them is that you have to know at least the basic fundamentals of writing and structure and in some grammar, at least a very basic level. So that way, when you're looking at it and it's making these suggestions, you can go, that's not quite right, because it doesn't match what my style is, what I'm trying to convey. Sometimes it will change things, and not for the better. Like for instance, I was talking with a student of mine, and they had typed out more faint, and its suggestion was fainter. Within the context of that sentence, it did not work. It did not make a lick of sense. So do your due diligence, and be proactive. Use it as a suggestions tool, not to edit your work, but as a suggestion. It's suggesting that you do this, accept or no. It fits, yeah, it makes sense. Accept, doesn't. Delete it, and it's gone. That's all I'll say on both of those, because I'm going to go into it in way more detail, and you guys will actually be able to see what I'm talking about when I post the video. I gotta look at the schedule and see what I had decided for it. It will probably be after the next live stream. Okay, what is the best way to quicken your writing pace? This is another one that I found on Quora. If you guys haven't been to Quora, there's some really cool stuff there. There's a lot of questions that get answered. Some of them are pretty vanilla, but for the ones that actually answer the question rather than being like, I know more than you do, those ones, just filter through it. But it's an interesting place. So quickening your writing pace. Over the last, what is it? I did be 8 months. It'd be 8 months now. Over the last 8 months, I have created and refined and am still refining my writing process. But the way that I teach my clients when I do the story coaching is by breaking it down into more bite-sized chunks. So the first thing that you need to do is you need to schedule time for your writing. I did a video about this and posted it last week. It's all about how to use Google Calendars to block out your day, so that way you know where you can have time to write. The next part is scheduling an hour of time and seeing how many words per hour you can type. So it's not words per minute, it's words per hour. So if, for example, when I did this back in February of this year, actually it was before that. It was probably October or November of last year that I attempted this, and then I've refined it. I found out that in an hour, if I know what it is and I have a clear vision for what I want to write, I can write 1,300 words an hour. And that was essentially an article, a blog article. So if you've been over to my blog, well, they're not there now, but what's wrong with Lord of the Rings, or what people get wrong about Lord of the Rings, I wrote up one of those articles in an hour. And that was just brain dumping. Now, on average, if I'm pantsing the story and I hadn't thought about it beforehand, I average probably closer anywhere between 800 and 1,000. So what that allows me to do is if I look at that hour time span, then I go, okay, what was my chapter length going to be? Let's see. So Verity says that she can write 800 words in an hour if it's an article. If it's a story, well, if I'm not in the zone of more like 200 words. Some days it certainly feels like that. It's just like you're just sitting there and it's just like your brain, it just shuts off. And it's extremely aggravating. Yeah, what are words? Exactly. But with this writing process that I've been refining, I find myself not running into that as much. So when I'm writing my first draft, and this part developed when I was doing my NaNoWriMo, writing 50,000 words in January. It's not actually a thing. I just made it up. Be impressed. It helps me, my confidence. I knew I needed to write 667 words per day to reach 50,000. I knew that if I only wrote that much per day, I would probably not reach 50,000. So, and my chapters needed a range. So I had my goal of 50,000 and I broke it down by how many days. And then I said, okay, how many words per chapter do I want to have? And I chose anywhere between, at the time, 1,750 and 500, or excuse me, 2,500. So that was my range. I started 3 days in, so technically my word count had bumped up a bit. Otherwise, it probably would have been closer to 16 to 2,500. And what I found is that by doing that, what naturally started to happen is when I started reaching that 1,700 words or getting really close to it, my brain naturally started to turn and go, okay, we've been creating this. How do we end this chapter? And so that allowed me to then resolve that chapter in either the next couple hundred words or around 2,500 words, because I knew I still had a huge range that I could play with, but I was constantly, so it's I call it the pivot point, right? So it's you're creating, and then your brain naturally pivots to how do we end. So I knew that if I was going to be writing 1,700 words at a minimum, then I was going to need, based on what my writing was per hour, at least 2 hours of writing time per chapter. So I don't break it down into so many words and then I'm done, because I don't like leaving off just bothers me. So I decided that was my chapter range for the first draft. And then I started writing. And what I found is that it was very easy to be consistent with my writing because I had time scheduled. I knew how many words per hour I needed to do, or I could do, I was capable of doing. I knew what I needed to hit per day to reach my goal. And then I set a separate goal of a words per chapter count. And I put it on a spectrum. And most of my chapters they ended around 1,800 to 1,900 words, 2,000 to 2,100 words on the high end. I never actually reached 2,500, I don't think. But that was my sweet spot. And that is how I busted through 50,000 words in 29 days, was doing it and using this process. So now I'm reverse engineering it and trying to get what has worked in my brain out to you guys, which is why I'm doing the Creating Your Writing Process series, so like this next video is going to be talking a little bit about this. So spoilers, you guys get a head start on everybody else with this. But creating a writing process is how you quicken your pace. You have your music, you have your set writing time, you have a 30-minute buffer leading up to your writing time, because you need, how many of you sit down and you're like, all right, I'm ready. I'm just like, I'm hungry. I should probably grab something to eat. And I'm thirsty. It's kind of like, it's like those storybooks. Like if you give a moose a muffin, like if you give a writer a word, like time to write, they're going to need a snack to go with it. And then if you give a writer a snack, they're going to need a drink to go with it. So if you see, I'm prepared. I has snack. I has agua la vita. I am ready to go. And I have, well, it's not on now, but I have music playing. Some of you don't write well with music, and that is okay. But what you want to do is you want to create a writing atmosphere. You want to create a replicable process that allows you to do the same thing every time, or very near or very close to it, because it trains your brain to write during that time. And giving yourself an hour's writing time, it's essentially a writing sprint, right? If you're saying, I'm going to write for this long, write as many words as you can. It's a writing sprint. Create an atmosphere for your writing. So like, for example, what I have in my office, it's still coming along, but, I've created a nice backdrop. I got, these aesthetically pleasing to the eye little stools over here. I have these really ugly bookshelves that will be not so ugly, hopefully by the next live stream. And they'll actually have my books. I moved into what I call the Bard Cave. So my books are actually on the other side. My laptop is on the ledge of the built-in bookshelf. So I'm behind my books, and I want my books behind me. It does me no good to have all of these beautiful pages and they're not behind me. So create that writing process, create that sense of that atmosphere for your writing using music, creating a writing plan. And what you'll find is that as you do that more consistently, your writing pace will increase. Here's a great example. The publisher that I'm working for, freelance, I have 11 students. They need to reach 15,000 words by Sunday. Several of them were about 8,000 words shy. I went over this process with them, and they made up that time in a week. And these are people who have full-time jobs. One of them is a college student. Well, two of them, I think, are college students. They work in the tech industry, and they're IT. So these people have made up 8,000 words in 5-6 days for some of them, using this writing process, just knowing how to break it down. So it's like, all right, you need 8,000 more words. How much time do you actually have to write? If it's not per day, then how many hours do you need to write? How many words per hour can you write? How many stories? So rather than doing 2,000 or 3,000 words for one story, write 1,000 to 1,500 words and get 2. Ta-da! So it's taking it and it's just reverse engineering it a little bit to fit your lifestyle, because how I do it, I've created it based on how I write. So it's up to you guys to take it and go, okay, how am I going to do this? And then implement it. Okay, so that is quickening your writing pace. What are some, so this is going to the next question. What are some tips about writing a fantasy series without making up any words or languages? Well, we're not all as awesome as Verity is in creating multiple languages for every single country and county and city and homestead as she is. So the way that I've written my fantasy series is, or planned it at least, is I've based it off of a culture. So Irish, Scottish, Gaelic, and Welsh for most of my cultures on the northern part of my map. And so I do use some of the actual phrasing and some of the actual words from those dialects, depending on the kingdom that my characters are in. Especially names. I use Scottish and Gaelic names, but I don't go into the process of creating a new dialogue or an entirely new language. If I really wanted to, I could. But because I have world builders-itis, I've just decided to not. Russian culture and languages. Yeah, I love using real life cultures because, one, it makes it a little bit more relatable for readers, right? Because they're going to go, oh, I know what that is, And I've been accused of cultural appropriation for that, and I told the lady, I was like, look, I'm about as white as you can possibly get, and I'm 49% Irish. You need to take a step back there, sister. Like, slow them ponies, rein the ponies in, go find somewhere else to throw out hate and cultural appropriation. That's not what this is. Like, it is literally my heritage. So sorry if you're offended by my heritage and the fact that I'm utilizing it in a story. So hashtag sorry, not sorry. So I use those. I have swear words in my story, but nobody knows what they are. I've made up words for them. One of them is like et thid. No one knows what et thid means. I don't know if I know what et thid means. I think it's like their version of like, what the hell? That would probably be the closest one. Udar is the one who uses like the stronger curse word, but he only has one. I don't remember what that one is. I'd have to look and find it. But just make up stuff. Like, it is your freaking story. The key is just be consistent. Like, if you're going to create your own thing, then you need to be consistent with the rules within your own world. So, so like specifically the Eomlade shapeshifters, their curse words are specific to them. Et thid and et something else. That is specific. That is language that their culture, their race uses as a swear word. Trinia is they'll use like the name of her pagan gods. That's what she does. And then Udar, he's been alive forever, so he just can't tell us what he wants. But I'm consistent with the one thing that he does. And I think there's another character who I think uses hells a lot, and I will totally own the fact that I stole that from Rachel on Wattpad, from her book, because it was awesome. Yep, from Rachel. I totally took it. Or I'll use like pox and plagues. Again, it's a very generic thing, and I fit it within the culture, so that way it makes sense. Because if you're spouting off something that doesn't make sense to the culture, then you're not doing it right. Now, that being said, you don't have to do any of that. You can just write your normal English swear words. And yes, Verity, she is awesome. I love her writing. So I mean, you don't have to use any languages. You don't have to make anything up. You can just have, King Bob swore, and we know that King Bob curses like a sailor. We don't hold it against King Bob. King Bob is just not that interesting. So you don't have to do that, right? So it is really up to you when you're planning out the series. You just have to be consistent. And this actually brings it. Nope, just kidding. I do have. I'm going to have to speed it up a little bit because there's a world building question, and I absolutely have to get that. So the next question after this one is, what are the elements of a bestseller book? You've written it. I mean, there's no magic formula. It's based on the market. It's based on how you market your book, whether it's going to become a bestseller or not. And honestly, even nowadays, that title doesn't really hold a lot of weight, thanks to Amazon. It used to be where you would submit to a publishing company. They would publish your book. You would work really freaking hard for maybe decades and achieve a #1 bestseller. Now on Amazon, and I'm not even joking when I tell you this, there was a guy who took a picture of his left foot, put it on the cover, said, "Putting your foot down" as the title. The author was by left foot. It had 5 pages, and he categorized it in such a way, in some obscure category. Then he asked a couple of his friends. He texted them and said, "Hey, can you buy my book?" And they were like, "What's it about?" "My left foot." Done. Within 5 minutes, it was a #1 bestseller on Amazon in those categories. This is the world that we've come to when we can take pictures of our feet. I mean, you could take your Instagram photo, for goodness sake, and of your feet, and people will like it. So why not your foot? Your foot should have a say. Your foot should be a bestseller too. Don't leave it out. I mean, there's scripture, right? Don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. Left hand, it's writing a book. It's getting published. Right hand doesn't know. I mean, it's ridiculous. So there is no magic formula for writing a bestseller book. You just don't even focus on that. Just write a good book. Like, that should be your primary focus. Write a good book, market it really well, have people buy it, have people be interested in it. For God's sakes, edit the book. Please edit the book. Have a book edited. Don't do the whole thing yourself. Have a professional edit your book. But then it's up to the amount that you sell. And it's how you categorize it. I mean, seriously, like, if somebody can get his left foot famous in 5 minutes, then whatever book that you're doing, just place it in some obscure thing, and then suddenly you're a #1 bestseller. But doing that does not make you a best-selling author. That means you've scammed the Amazon system, and congrats. You're the #1 best-selling author in occult and Mormonism, and your story's about a unicorn. It makes no sense. So don't do that. Don't focus on trying to be a best-selling author. Focus on writing a good book that, if, like, go figure, hard work. If you write a book that is interesting and is good and is engaging, and people buy it and people review it and people love it and people become fans of it, you will maybe become a good selling author. Maybe not best-selling, but it'll be good. You'll make a living off of it. Maybe if all of the stars align, you'll have a best-selling book. Maybe. But if that is your goal, take a picture of your left foot, sell it for $4 on Amazon, and you call yourself a best-selling author. That's really what it boils down to. If that is all you're interested in, just do that. Don't bother writing a book. Take a picture of your left foot. Well, technically that would be a copyright. So maybe do your hand or your finger or your nose. You don't want to break copyright rules because that guy will probably sue you for using, remaking his left foot. Unless you do a parody and, you use your right foot. Anyway, I've run on and ranted on a tangent about that. We're going to get to the world building. So Vanna asked, and for those this is a friend of ours that asked the question, is world building organically versus having everything planned in advance. So like, how do you do that? The way that I do that is by simply not living in an echo chamber. What I see far too often with authors is that they'll be like, oh, and the sun was out and the flowers were blooming and there was all these magical things happening, and then the two people start talking and all of a sudden it just goes gone. It's like that scene in Get Smart, the cone of silence, where they're all trapped in this little force field, but it'd be like two people like that and they're having dialogue and like the entire world is just gone. Too many people do that. So the way that you world build organically is you remember that they're in a real world. They're in your world. They're in the world that you're creating. So for example, if you're writing about your two characters at a park, right? And they're at a park and they're sitting down, they're having conversation. They should be at various points interrupted by screams, birds, music, people walking by, joggers, there should be something that says we are in a world, not in an echo chamber where it's just us. And then all of a sudden we emerge back and we're like, oh, it's the real world. I forgot we were here. There's a story. Oh my gosh. Don't do that. That is part of how you world build organically. Those little things add up to bigger world building advantages. Now, everyone loves to, well, maybe not everybody, but I in particular love to fill my world with different things. And I actually have a world building video series planned. I've already recorded most of the videos. I have to wait to get them edited. But I'm going to be going into this in a lot more detail. But I have 4 C's of world building: creatures, culture, creation, conflict. That's what I use when I world build. So I look at creatures. Like if I'm writing fantasy, what creatures are going to fill my world? Are they mythical? And I really break it down. There's the mythical creatures, there's the legendary creatures, there's folklore creatures, and then there's like the real creatures. So real creatures would be like dogs, cats, deer, elk, those kinds of things. Folklore is like the stories that are specific to certain regional areas, right? Just like there's like logger stories from the 1800s, like Paul Bunyan. That'd be folklore. It's stories that were kind of made up and embellished, and there may be a grain of truth in them. Then there's legendary. I think of this on like a national level. So like a legend I see as, like King Arthur's legend, or shoot. I am blanking on the other example that I had. But so legends it has a grain of truth in it. Specifically dragons, right? We have legends about dragons. That is based off of what we believe if somebody in medieval Europe was digging around and they found a dinosaur bone, they would be like, holy crap, what was this? Well, it was obviously some sort of creature, right? So it must have been big, breathe fire, poisonous gas, whatever. So that dragons, mythical creatures, I think of that they don't really have any basis in reality in terms of like what is physically tangible, but they're more of this like ethereal, this mystical qualities, like elemental, like the Chinese air dragon. This is just my personal view on it, is that it's more of a mythical creature than it is like a legendary creature. So I break it down like that. And those are the bigger things that I look at when filling it out. So I have 8 to 10 different creatures in my world, and they're all different, right? They're all very unique. Some of them are just downright terrifying. Then you go to culture. Culture, it should be diverse. You should have a diverse based on how big your world is. I have 3 separate continents that my story is going to take place in over the course of 1,500 years. So I'm going to have a lot of different cultures represented. And I do base a little bit of that off of actual cultures. The customs, the mannerisms, some of the religions, some of the practices like hospitality. Those are kinds of things that I look to help kind of flesh out my world. Now, I don't go hardcore on that. I take it as inspiration, and then I use it in a way to make this culture interesting and fit within my world, because it's not Celtic, it's not Scottish Gaelic, it's not Welsh, but I use elements of that and I put it in here. Magic. What type of magic system does it have? Does it have one? You don't have to have a magic system in fantasy. It's what most people expect to find in some level, but it doesn't have to be in there. Now, where I tend to plan out my world building is in how the characters interact with those cultures. Because again, they're not in an echo chamber. There is, for every action, there is a reaction. And so if someone insults someone in that culture because they're a part of a different culture, there's a consequence that should happen. So you have to think about that. Like, how do real world things apply to your story? If there is an action, like my biggest pet peeve is super powerful wizard uses magic and there's absolutely zero consequence. None. It doesn't drain him. He's just like the Energizer Bunny. He's got his little magic and he's just like beating on his tom-toms. He's like, yep, I can do this all day. Yep. Mergic all day. It's not interesting. So have a consequence. For spoilers, for spoiler reasons, I can't tell you like what Trinia's power is. For those of you who have gone to Wattpad and read the first draft, at least the parts that I had up before I took it down, you guys know. But I have her power have a very specific consequence for using it. And it makes her hesitant to use it. So she doesn't want to use her power. This is a girl who literally has the power to destroy the world that she knows and loves, but she doesn't want to use it because it costs her something. And she doesn't want to pay that price. So that is the kind of interesting world building that you want to build in and you want to think about and plan for, is what kind of reactions are people going to have? My main character starts off pagan, essentially. She worships all these old gods, blood sacrifices, all that kind of stuff. She meets Udar, who serves the one true creator God and has a life-changing experience, but there's consequences that ripple out from that you really aren't going to see come to a full conclusion in the first book that really kind of come into play in the second. So it's those kinds of things that you want to strategically put into your story to make it feel real. You know, the grass, the trees, the wind, the smell of flowers, the smell of cooked meats, the smell of a city. Knowledale is one of the towns, one of the cities in my book, and it basically smells disgusting. Like, it just smells like an outhouse, and everybody there is just kind of like, oh god, oh, this is so bad. But and eventually again, it gets to the point where their nose just kind of gets numb to it. You know how there's that smell, and finally just like, all right, well, it's not so bad, I guess. My nose is basically just dead. We're good. But that is a real world thing. If I think back to medieval times, guess what? Sewage was flowing freely through the streets. It wasn't all this pretty cobblestone, and like, it was mud, poop, and guts. Literally, butchers throw the guts out into the street. That was the sewage system. It was the street. And we wonder why there was so much death and disease. Anyway, so I took that example and I put it into the book. Now, not every city is like that. Knowledale is kind of like a den of thieves and ruffians and mercenaries, and like every unscrupulous person that you could possibly imagine, all stuffed into one city. That's Knowledale. And I want it to have that feel. It's not taken care of. People are murdered in broad daylight. That's the kind of city it's in. Excuse me. So plan those kinds of things out. When your character does something, real world says it has a reaction. Something happens because of that. You may not find out what that is until maybe 4, 5, 10, 20 chapters in, but it has a consequence of some kind. If someone uses magic, it kills a squirrel. You know, like, there's a consequence. Like, use something like that as an example. Like, if someone uses magic, there should be a consequence. Bird diet, squirrels get indigestion. Something happens. It just doesn't, it's not just this vacuum. That's it's not interesting, nor is it realistic, and nor does it pull people into the world as much. I want people to feel like they're in the world that I am creating for them. So, and again, I'll go into more detail on this in the series, because I'm actually going to break down how I do the four C's of world building in a lot more detail. All right, so we've gone over time a little bit. I mean, we got started late because YouTube decided to be a pain. I didn't get to the last question that I had planned on, but I will put it into the lineup for the next live stream, and that will be the first one that we address. Just to kind of get your guys' idea, like, what was your favorite part of the questions today? What did you enjoy? What stood out to you? This kind of helps me figure out, like, okay, what do I search for, so that way I can give you guys the content that is really going to help. Because while I might think some of this stuff is interesting, you guys might not. And I really want to try and help you guys become the best authors that you can possibly be. So do you have any thoughts or questions or anything that you would like me to address in the next live stream or in a video? What do you guys think? Got anything? Any ideas? So Verity says the writing process stuff was really useful. Had to note some of it down for future reference. Good. I'm glad. That has seriously kind of been the game changer for most of my coaching clients, is going through this and helping them creating a writing process. So, and I'll have more in the video series coming out here soon for that, which I'm super excited about. Because I'll be going into details for how you can use Word more effectively, how you can use Grammarly and Pro Writing Aid more effectively, and scene setting. Okay, I am going to write that down right now, because that is actually something I have noticed pop up fairly often in author groups. Is how to set a scene, and that'd actually be a lot of fun to go into. I love doing that. It's like next to world building, that's like one of the other things that I absolutely love to do. And it's reverse engineering it a little bit, very similar to the writing process. But yeah, I will trying to decide whether like to do it in a live stream or like do it like a specific video. I think what I'll do is I'll do a specific video for that. I think that it will be the best way to go, because I don't want it to get smushed in between, 7 other questions, and then I have to kind of brush over it, and when I can actually go into detail on it and break it down in a much easier way. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you haven't already, make sure that you go and subscribe and hit the bell, so that way you get notifications of when I go live or when I upload new content. In the weeks in between my live stream is when I am uploading new video content. And you'll see that I'm posting stuff on Facebook and Twitter, not so much LinkedIn, but I'm getting up and running on Instagram again. Awesome. Thank you so much, Shadow. Glad to have you along. And actually hold that thought. Hold it right there. Put a pin in it as quickly as I can possibly make Google Chrome work. It's thinking. It's trying. It's trying really hard. We're on a struggle bus today with YouTube. Shadow, you are subscriber number 50. So you should feel super duper special for being the 50th subscriber. And because I had already made a promise, and I don't know if anybody sees when I actually post on the YouTube channel, but this specific video on scene setting will be dedicated to Shadow, because they were the 50th subscriber. So congratulations. You are going to be the first person to have a video dedicated especially to them. That's pretty much everything that I have for you guys. I'll be getting to work on scene setting. That will be essentially a bonus video in addition to the other ones that I have going on. And if you have any other questions, make sure that you either comment on this video down below. You are very, very welcome. Thank you for subscribing. Or send me an email, whether that's through my website or Facebook or Twitter, or maybe not Instagram, because Instagram is funky and I can't actually check messages on Instagram. So website or on YouTube, comment down below. Let me know what it is that, if you guys have questions or things that you would like me to cover specifically. Yeah, poor Verity. She's ticked off the Instagram overlords. All right, guys. Thank you so very much for joining me on today's live stream. I will have links down below in the show notes for all of the things that I've talked about today: Grammarly, Pro Writing Aid, Xmind, Campfire, Technologies, World Anvil. All of those will be down below. All right, guys. Thank you so much. and have a wonderful rest of your Friday the 13th.